about this whole NBA scandalous situation. The WNBA is at the front line of it all too, because they is connected to this league. Now, I am here to tell you, the FBI is letting it be known they want phone records, schedules, the whole shebang. Now, we know just a couple of days ago, it was reported that none other than Adam Silver had to meet with the committee to discuss this whole situation involved.
There's a wild story making headlines right now. It appears the FBI has actually subpoenaed both the WNBA and the NBA. Yes, the FBI is now officially involved in professional basketball. Commissioners are being called in to answer some serious questions. This isn't a small situation. It's a federal investigation involving subpoenas for phone records and allegations that could shake both leagues. And this isn't a rumor or social media speculation. Federal authorities are requesting documents, schedules, and a large amount of evidence from multiple teams. The sports world just went from zero to serious very fast. Before we get into it, tell me in the comments, do you think gambling scandals in pro sports are more common than we realize? Or is this just the beginning?
Indictments were announced involving current player Terry Rozier and current head coach Chauncey Billups. What was your initial reaction, and what have the last 36 hours been like for you?
My initial reaction was I was deeply disturbed. There's nothing more important to the league and its fans than the integrity of the competition. And so I had a pit in my stomach. It was very upsetting.
And Terry Rozier was allowed to keep playing after an NBA investigation ruled that there was no NBA rules violated. What do you make of that decision now amid the FBI's allegations against him?
So what happened was, because bets were placed through legalized legal betting companies, they picked up aberrational behavior around a particular game in March of 23.
Look, the FBI is now officially investigating the NBA and by extension, the WNBA. This is no longer an internal league issue that can be handled quietly behind closed doors with a few fines or suspensions. We're talking about federal authorities requesting phone records, schedules, documents, and even property from multiple teams. The Department of Justice is involved, and congressional committees are beginning to ask questions. This is as serious as it gets at SO. What do we actually know according to multiple reports, including breaking news from The Athletic? The NBA has been asked to provide records and property from several teams, with the Los Angeles Lakers specifically mentioned. Why the Lakers? We'll get into that. But the key point is this. The investigation isn't limited to one franchise. Multiple teams are under scrutiny. The Lakers are simply the biggest name that has leaked so far. 2 Lakers staff members have already cooperated with investigators and handed over their phones. Those individuals are Mike Monchase, who works with the team, and Randy Mims, an executive administrator. They voluntarily turned in their devices, which would mean they have nothing to hide, or that their lawyers advise them to cooperate immediately. Either way, federal investigators now have full access to their messages, calls, and all communications on those phones that SO what exactly is being investigated. At the center of this is sports gambling, specifically whether players, coaches, or staff members shared inside information to help bettors profit. This goes far beyond simply placing bets, which would already be a major violation. Investigators are looking into possible conspiracy to defraud, the misuse of privileged information for financial gain, and even potential game manipulation. These are federal crimes, not just league rule violations. Next, Voice, and so this whole situation is just wild.
To our attention by the regulators and the betting companies. We then looked into that situation and were very transparent about it. And while there was that aberrational betting, we frankly couldn't find anything. Terry at the time cooperated. He gave the league office his phone. He sat down for an interview, and we ultimately concluded that there was insufficient evidence despite that aberrational behavior to move forward. We then worked directly with the law enforcement, as they said at the press conference, that the league has been cooperating, and so that was obviously over 2 years ago. So the federal government has subpoena power, can threaten to put people in jail, can do all kinds of things that a league office can't do. So we've been working with them since then. And of course, what they announced yesterday was an indictment. So 2.5 years later, he still hasn't been convicted of anything, in fairness to Terry. Obviously, it doesn't look good, but he's now been put on administrative leave. And so, there's a balance here of protecting people's rights and investigating. And as I said, we've been working with the government, and they have extraordinary powers that a league office.
The NBA, no subpoena powers. You don't have to talk to the NBA investigators or MLB Department of Investigations. When the federal government asks you a question, you have to answer. Now, you can invoke the Fifth Amendment, be my guest, enjoy, but they have the right to compel you to testify. There are grand juries who are seated to look at evidence in a way that the leagues don't do with their Department of Investigations. It's a totally different level of scrutiny. So Adam Silver, that's the least of his issues, to be asked by people like you, hey, how stupid were you that you cleared Terry Rozier? That is not the question. The question is going forward. He'll answer it, but the question going forward is, what do we do to work better with the FBI, better with the gambling companies who are our partners, to give comfort to our customers, like you said in the first hour, comfort that the integrity has not dropped even an iota.
This investigation really gained momentum after federal charges were filed against some major names. Terry Rozier, a guard from Miami Heat, was arrested and charged. Chauncey Billups, the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, was also implicated. These aren't fringe players or low-level assistants. These are established NBA figures. When active players and head coaches are being charged by federal authorities, you know the situation runs incredibly deep. But here's where it gets even more serious. Congressional committees have started questioning the NBA about why the league failed to report evidence that players and coaches were involved in this scheme. That means the NBA either knew something was happening, or at the very least had information that should have been forwarded to authorities and didn't. That's a massive problem. It could be interpreted as obstruction, and at minimum, it creates a PR disaster that makes the league look either complicit or completely incompetent. The Lakers keep getting mentioned because of their connection to LeBron James. One of the individuals charged in this investigation is Damon Jones, a former NBA player, a known friend of LeBron's, and someone who has coached alongside him in various capacities. Now, no one is directly accusing LeBron of anything illegal, but federal investigators have requested documents from at least 10 Lakers employees due to those connections. When your close associate is under federal investigation, authorities naturally want to know what you knew and when you knew it. Some people online are even speculating that LeBron's recent limited playing time has nothing to do with basketball. Maybe he's dealing with legal issues behind the scenes. Maybe lawyers advise him to lay low. Or maybe more realistically, he's simply injured and the timing is coincidental. But when a federal gambling investigation surrounds your organization and people you know are being charged, speculation writes itself. Now, let's talk about the WNBA angle, because this absolutely affects them too. The WNBA operates under the NBA's umbrella. They share financial, administrative, and organizational structures. So if the FBI is investigating gambling and insider information in the NBA, you can guarantee the WNBA is next in line. The logical sequence is finish the NBA portion of the investigation, then immediately pivot to the WNBA. And the WNBA has had its own controversies this season, questionable officiating, suspicious calls at decided games, and accusations of bias and favoritism. Nothing has been proven, but fans have been vocal about things looking off. If investigators start examining whether referees or team personnel shared information with gamblers, the WNBA could face intense scrutiny. The league is smaller, which ironically makes illegal activity easier to organize and tougher to detect. What makes this investigation particularly serious is the personal information component. Federal charges state that individuals were using inside information to help bettors profit. What kind of information? Think about injury reports that haven't been made public yet. Game plans, strategy sessions, even personal problems players might be dealing with that could affect performance. Whether a coach plans to rest starters. All of this is gold for gamblers, and if insiders were selling it, that's a federal crime. Referees are another deeply concerning angle. If referees were sharing information, or worse, manipulating games to influence betting outcomes, that destroys the integrity of the entire sport. We've seen it before. Tim Donaghy is the most famous example, an NBA referee who bet on games he officiated and manipulated calls to affect point spreads. He ended up in federal prison. If something similar is happening now, the fallout would be catastrophic. The NBA appears to be trying to get ahead of this by contacting teams through their legal departments and collecting documents before the FBI officially demands them. It's a smart legal strategy. It shows cooperation and attempts to maintain control of the narrative. But it also strongly suggests the league knows things are bad and is scrambling to contain the damage. You don't suddenly request internal documents from 10 employees on one team unless something serious is unfolding. The timing of several recent events is also suspicious. The Dallas Wings just fired their head coach and general manager. Other teams have made abrupt personnel changes that felt strange when they happened. Were those moves connected to this investigation? Were organizations cutting ties with people they thought might be involved in illegal gambling? We don't know yet, but the timing raises eyebrows. What's wild is how fast this story has exploded. It broke only a few hours ago, and it's already dominating headlines. The New York Post, major sports networks, and social media are flooded with reactions and speculation. This is not going to be a quiet scandal that fades away. This story is going to dominate sports news for weeks, maybe even months. Federal investigations move slowly and thoroughly. Every phone record, every email, every text message will be examined. Anyone connected to anyone under suspicion will be questioned. For the WNBA in particular, the timing couldn't be worse. The league is already dealing with stalled CBA negotiations. Players are unsure about the future, and although attendance and viewership climbed significantly this past year, which is great financial stability, is still a major concern. Now add a federal gambling investigation on top of that. It's a nightmare scenario for a league that was finally gaining positive momentum. Commissioner Cathy Engelbert is going to face some very difficult questions. If the FBI finds that gambling-related corruption existed in the WNBA, even on a small scale, the league's credibility could take a devastating hit. Fans need to believe games are legitimate, that outcomes aren't predetermined or manipulated, that the competition is real. Once that trust breaks, rebuilding it takes years. The congressional scrutiny is especially concerning. When elected officials start holding hearings about a sports league failing to report criminal activity, the situation goes beyond a legal problem. It becomes political. It becomes about accountability and transparency. The NBA generates billions in revenue and has massive cultural influence. Congress wants to know why a league that powerful wasn't doing more to prevent or report illegal gambling operations. Some people are defending the league, saying it's impossible to monitor every employee's personal communications or catch every bad actor. That's true to a point. But when federal prosecutors are charging current players and coaches, when congressional committees are demanding answers, and when the FBI is subpoenaing records from multiple teams, it suggests something bigger than a few isolated incidents. It suggests a systemic issue. The phrase comprehensive federal investigation keeps appearing in reports, and that should worry everyone associated with professional basketball. Comprehensive means investigators are looking at everything. Every team, every department, every person who might have had access to valuable information. This isn't targeted at one individual or one organization. Investigators believe the problem could be widespread. For players and coaches who had nothing to do with illegal gambling, this is incredibly frustrating. Their reputations are being questioned simply through association. Every decision they made on the court is now being second-guessed by fans wondering whether games were fixed. Even if they're completely innocent, the cloud of suspicion hangs over everyone until the investigation concludes that WNBA players are probably watching all of this unfold with rising anxiety. They're already fighting for better pay, better working conditions, and greater respect for their league. Now they have to worry that a federal gambling investigation might damage the WNBA's reputation and financial stability even further. It's unfair to them, but it's a reality when your league is tied to a larger organization under federal scrutiny. Social media reactions have been exactly what you'd expect. Some people are making jokes. Some are creating conspiracies about which players or coaches were involved. Others are genuinely concerned about the future of professional basketball. Comment sections are filled with speculation about LeBron, about whether certain games were fixed, about which teams will be implicated next. It's chaos, and it's only going to intensify as more details emerge. An interesting perspective surfaced from Sophie Cunningham, not directly about the gambling case, but relevant. She said people see players competing intensely on the court and assume that's what they're like off the court. She suggested fans need to get to know players as actual people, not just athletes. It's a fair point, and especially relevant now. Just because someone is connected to an investigation doesn't mean they're guilty. Just because federal authorities are asking questions doesn't mean everyone involved did something wrong. But the thing about federal investigations is simple. They don't care about nuance or public image. They care about evidence and prosecuting crimes. If laws were broken, charges will follow no matter how famous, talented, or well-liked someone is. Professional athletes aren't exempt from the justice system. The next few weeks will be crucial. The NBA and WNBA commissioners will likely have to make public statements. More names will probably leak as documents are subpoenaed and phone records reviewed. Teams will continue to lawyer up and cooperate because they have no choice. And fans will keep speculating about what all of this means for the future of professional basketball. And so that's where things stand right now with the FBI's investigation into gambling within professional basketball. Federal authorities are serious. Multiple teams are implicated, and both the NBA and WNBA are facing intense scrutiny.